One of my favorite features of the Q3 is the in-camera crop mode, which is controlled by one of the function buttons on the back. Pressing this will display different frame lines on the LCD screen and the EVF, with the number at the right bottom corner reading 35, 50, 75, or even 90. This will automatically crop the next photo into the field of view of that focal length. You will lose resolution, but the Q3 can handle it because it has a 60 megapixel sensor and the 28mm lens is extremely sharp. So I routinely enjoy cropping into 35 on the Q3 when taking photos or filming video. And it's like having a 35 and a 50mm camera all in one. And I don't know if everyone knows this, but the M11 also has that same exact feature. Here it's called digital zoom, and I'll show you where to find it. Just go into the menu, and the Leica M11 has a very simple menu system, and it's easy to navigate. On page 3, it's the digital zoom, and you can choose between 1.3 times crop or the 1.8 times crop. But I've mapped this feature to the small function button on the top plate, so this works almost exactly like the Q3. Again, there will be some loss in resolution, but the M11 has plenty of megapixels left to spare with its 60 megapixel sensor. And it also helps to have a sharp lens. The 35mm Summilux FLE close focus is a very sharp and very fast lens. I thought about upgrading to the Apo35 Summicron, but I'm still not sure. It is a smaller lens and more compact than this one, and it's one of Leica's most sharpest lenses. But I think the extra gain in sharpness will be very minimal, especially if I stop down to f2.0 or 2.8. And I would lose the option of having an extra stop of light on the Summilux. And the Apo35 is over $8,000, and I would also lose money on selling the Summilux. So I'm going to stick with the Summilux for now. 35 is my favorite focal length to shoot right now. It's very versatile and it produces a real-life field of view. But the 50 is also nice to have, especially when photographing people. I always like to travel light, and having the chance to crop in camera lets me shoot at 50 without bringing an extra lens. Of course, you can crop in with editing, but cropping in camera is so much more convenient, and you can see the final result of the framing on the LCD screen. There are some limitations, and cropping is not exactly the same as using a native 50mm lens, but very close if I'm just cropping in by one step. Here's an example standing in the same spot. 35mm uncropped gives a wide field of view. Cropping into 1.3 into a 50mm field of view is a little bit tighter, and down to 1.8 into a 75 is even tighter. 35, in my opinion, comes the closest to what I see naturally. It's a wide image, gets a lot in the image, but it's not too wide. It's a good lens to set the scene when standing far away, but you can also move in closer if you want. 50mm is also a nice focal length. It's a little less for scenery and more for subject-based photos, and cropping into 1.3 will reproduce that 50mm look. And cropping into 1.8 can even give you that 75mm focal length view. This is more of a telephoto focal length. I can also use it for macro shots and to shoot subjects where I can't move in closer physically or I don't want to move in closer. But you might say, why not just move in closer instead of cropping? And that's where the issue of distortion comes in. Here I moved in close to fill the frame, uncropped in 35mm, and here the headlights and the hood look unnaturally large. But here, just taking a few steps back and cropping into 1.8 for that 75mm field of view, it gives you a much more natural shape to the vehicle. And it still almost fills the frame. And when hitting playback, the zoom factor is displayed on the right-hand side of the screen. But when importing it into Lightroom, I can't see the zoom factor and the photo is automatically cropped. I think there's two major disadvantages to in-camera cropping. One is the loss in resolution. The resolution going into a 50mm field of view will go down from 60 to 39, and then going into a 75mm field of view will go down to 18 megapixels. But 39 megapixels is still very highly detailed, and I have no problem losing that amount of resolution. The next issue is the bokeh. The level of separation will not exactly be the same as a native 50mm lens, but the 35mm Summilux has such a wide aperture at 1.4, and it has the ability to close focus, so it has a very good baseline bokeh. Even when I crop in to 1.8, still has a very good subject separation. So if I want to shoot mainly in 35, but still have the option to shoot in 50, and I still want to travel light, I think the in-camera digital zoom is a great option. It's much more convenient than editing afterwards, and it allows me to avoid bringing an extra lens, so I can just travel with one camera and one lens.